Okay, now that we've toured through all of the specific design elements within Flex, let's look at a few pre-made layouts and dig into them and figure out what's been done and why they're using either a Flexbox or a container and how they shuffle between different breakpoints. So the template I have on screen is called our Good Pop template, and it's built in Flex. So let's take a look at the hero item. I'll click Edit in Flex mode, and let's see how this is built. So first of all, let's start with the grid. On the layers panel, let's select grid, which is kind of the top level containing item. And you can see here that our grid is a simple 1 by 1. So there are no columns and no rows other than just one in each. The reason we've done that is because this content's not going to stack or anything like that. We don't need any kind of underlying structure to follow. It's a simple hero, and as we go down to smaller breakpoints, it's just going to pile up on top of itself. So we've got the hero image behind now, we've got the soda and text above it. So that's why this is left at a simple 1 by 1 grid. Now this box here, if I click on that, you'll see that this is a Flexbox. We chose a Flexbox for this item because all of these elements within are vertically stacked. So there was no reason for us to choose a container and potentially make our life a little more difficult by dragging and dropping things around the box. We always want it to look like that, no matter what layout it's on. So a Flexbox was a great choice in this case. Let's exit out of our Flex editor. Let's scroll down the page and select another area. So here I have this little kind of 2-column video layout. So the underlying grid in this case is, you guessed it, a 2 by 1 grid because we've got kind of 2 halves. And those 2 halves, we're going to want to have them stack on the lower layouts, just like this. So we've gone 2-column grid and 1 row for that section. And on the left side, we have, again, a Flexbox because these items are just vertically aligned. And on the right side, we have a simple video widget. That video is set to 100% width. That means it's just going to simply fill this box to 100%. And no matter what breakpoint we're on, it's always going to have no margins around the outside of the box that it's contained in. Let's close out of that section. Let's go back to our desktop layout here. So let's scroll down the page and see what else we've done here. So if we go down to this reviews section, it says our happy customers, and click edit in Flex mode. This one's a little bit more complicated. We've got more elements within. Okay, starting with this top level grid item. So in my layers panel, I'll select grid. Let's move this out of the way. And you can see up top, we have a simple 1 by 1 grid that contains a couple of text elements. Now, could we have contained this whole layout in a multi-column grid? Probably. But we found it easier in this case to just create a 1 by 1 grid. And directly below that, we just have another grid. And in this case, it's 3 by 1. So you're not limited to the number of grids that you're using in your layouts. And by separating this one out, what we can do very easily on lower layouts here is have our title sit perfectly above that block in a 1 by 1 grid. And now the 3-column grid below is stacking nicely. So let's look at that 3 by 1 grid. So here we have the 3 by 1 grid. Within that, we have flex boxes. So again, this is a flex box because everything is just vertically stacked. But what about this area where you can see kind of a 2-column layout? Well, if I click into that, you can see it's actually a container element, which is one of those free-form design elements. So you can add containers that are freeform within Flexboxes as well for maximum flexibility. Now, this horizontal layout could have been achieved with a horizontal Flexbox, but we wanted just a little bit more drag and drop control over it. So the container itself is now being added to the vertical structure of this Flexbox, and all 3 of them are the same. They're just vertical Flexboxes, and they can be quickly selected using the layers panel. And those items, when we go down to smaller breakpoints, so let's see our tablet layout, what we've done is just simply change this to be a 1-column approach. And the way that we've done that is by selecting the underlying grid. And on the tablet layout, instead of 3 by 1, which it was set to by default, and this looks awful, we're going to just select 1 by 3, which stacks them perfectly. And then we could go down to an even smaller layout here and look at it on our mobile device, and you can see it's continuing to stack perfectly. So that's the kind of mindset you're going to need to have when you're designing in Flex. I know it's a bit of a different approach than you're used to using. However, that's why I say it's a really good idea to use sections if possible. So let's say I wanted to just add a grid of images with some captions. Well, here's a pre-made section that looks pretty close. And if I click Save, this comes in, and I could go ahead and perhaps delete items out of here as needed, but at least the underlying structure is set up for me. And it's already beautiful on every other breakpoint, so I don't need to go through and modify it one by one. So I hope you enjoy exploring Flex and digging into those pre-made layouts to learn more about how this system works and how you can achieve some really unique looks.